Hi, I'm David Kay. I teach law at UC Irvine School of Law, and I'm the co-director of UCI's brand new center, the Fair Elections and Free Speech Center. And I'm really happy to co-direct it with Professor Rick Hasson. One of the things about our center that is special and really unique is that I think we're recognizing the fact that threats to elections are global. Certainly, if you're American, you know about those threats to all sorts of voting rights, and also to the fact that our disinformation space is significant. But these are global problems, and one of the things that Rick and I decided was this is a real opportunity to highlight these problems from a global and an American perspective. So let me turn it over to you, Rick. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about why this initiative started. What was your impetus for it?
Well, David, I'm thrilled to be working with you. I think that this work is going to have national and global importance. Back just before COVID started, you and I attended a conference that I put together called Fair Elections During a Crisis, where we were talking about the threats to the 2020 election and the rise of disinformation and the concerns, even before COVID, that the losers were not going to accept the results of the election, in part because of disinformation spread on social media. And we put together a report, we held a conference, and we advocated, all of us who were on this ad hoc committee, for ways to try to make our elections safe and secure. And it struck me that we got very lucky in getting through the 2020 election, and that there's a lot of work to be done, and we need to work hard going forward in future elections. But it also seemed to me, and when I was thinking about starting a center like this, that you're right, these problems are not confined to the United States. They're not all the same problems everywhere around the world, but this is a global problem. And I thought there'd be no better partner on the global side than you, with your background on these issues and your work with the United Nations on human rights. What do you see as the main global threats to elections today?
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right that the threats are different. They vary from country to country, but there are some commonalities. And I think two of them are, on the one hand, governments and political actors are putting pressure on the ballot, and they're putting pressure not just in terms of who actually gets access to the ballot, although that's a real significant problem, but they're putting pressure on the kind of debate that people have access to, the kind of information that people have access to in order to make choices about public policy, about candidates, and so forth. That's a common problem around the world. And then the other problem is how internet companies, particularly social media companies and search companies, have taken such a dominant position in the information space in so many places. And it's created distance between the people in places where there are elections or there's supposedly robust public debate, and these private actors who are, generally speaking, thousands of miles away and making rules for that space. So, those are the kinds of problems. And hopefully, our initial set of activities will reflect on those problems and hopefully generate some ideas about how to solve them. I'm particularly interested in what you see as one of the leading scholars in American elections in this space, and as a constitutional lawyer and as a person who's thinking a lot about policy. What do you think is the key solutions, the key issues we should be addressing, and what are the kind of activities you're foreseeing for the first several months of the center that might address those?
So on the U.S. domestic side, we've got three programs for the fall. The first, which I think is the most important issue facing the United States right now in terms of politics, is election subversion, the danger that election results are not going to reflect the actual winner because there's going to be manipulation of how votes are tallied. And so we're going to hold a conference, a virtual conference on election subversion. And that conference is going to feature, among the first speakers, Brad Raffensperger, the Georgia Secretary of State, who stood up to Trump when Trump tried to get him to find 11,780 votes. I mean, quite a moment in American history, but we're going to bring in leading political scientists, leading election lawyers and scholars, and talk about, what can be done to students of Congress, leading political figures. So that's one thing we're doing. The second thing we're doing is we're going to have a three-part series on disinformation in American elections. What's the problem and what could be done? One set will be with election officials, and that will include Michigan Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson. Second round on looking at what legal scholars see can be done constitutionally, and then finally what social scientists can tell us about what we know about how disinformation affects elections. And then the last program we have set up right now on the domestic side is one about asking whether the US Constitution is fit to deal with contemporary democracy. And that's going to be just a blockbuster conversation with Yale's Jack Balkin, UCI Law's Michelle Goodwin, and Harvard's Michael Klarman, three really deep thinkers about constitutional theory. So I'm really excited about all of those. And I know you have work on the global side that's going to happen in the fall. So why don't you conclude by telling us about that?
Yeah, that's amazing, and hopefully on the global side we'll match some of that. We're going to start off at the very beginning of the semester with the program looking at the elections, some of the signature elections of the past year in Israel, Uganda, the Netherlands, and really look at what have been the threats that we've seen, and in particular, how a social media space and disinformation played a role in those elections. And then looking out over the course of the semester, we'll do a series of other events looking at upcoming elections. For example, Germany's big election after Angela Merkel's many years in power, and Hong Kong's legislative elections that are scheduled closer to the end of the year. But I'm really hopeful, and I think just thinking about these amazing events over the course of this semester, that we're really going to build something that gives the broader community, the United States, in the United States and globally, an opportunity to think about these issues and how to solve them. And I'm really excited to work with you on this, Rick.
Well, the feeling is mutual, and we're looking forward to having input from lots of people in the United States and around the world. So please join us at the Fair Elections and Free Speech Center at UCI Law. Take care.